Good afternoon. My name is Caroline Sanders. I am Commissioner for District 4. This is one of many conversations with Commissioner Sanders, and this time our guests will include um, judicial representation from our courts here in Washtenaw County. So Judge Conlin and Judge Frushour have graciously allowed us an hour or so of their time, and we're going to get started. I don't want to feign pretending that I know all that I should know about the two different courts. So I'm going to turn it over to them and let them give us a little bit about who they are, how they get here, and what are they representing in terms of the courts.
Sure. Judge
Anybody can go
Frushour, you want to
first.
go first?
Sure. I'm Judge Frushour. I'm the Chief Judge of the 14A District Court. That is the court that encompasses the district court that encompasses all of Washtenaw County except the city of Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti Township. Each of those have their own district courts.
Okay.
The district court is a court of limited jurisdiction, and we do primarily all the misdemeanors in our district, as well as small claims, civil under 25,000, landlord-tenant cases, and we also conduct the PCCs, which are the probable cause conferences and preliminary exams on all the felonies in the county as well. I went to U of M undergrad and then Wayne State Law School. Most of my work has been in public defense work. I was the public defender for the city of Ann Arbor for about 7 years. Prior to that, I also had a private defense firm. So I've worked in that realm for a good period of time before I ran for judge in 2019. The race was for a 2020 election, and the judge happened to step down early. And then I was appointed to the bench in 2019 and then elected in 2020.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Judge
Sure.
Conlin.
So I'm Patrick Conlin, and so I'm just going to say, Commissioner Sanders, this is a sexy title, but it's not the sexiest job, but Chief Judge is what Judge Frushour and I are. Which
Okay.
sounds like we should get a clothing allowance or a parking place, and it doesn't really work that way. But so Chief Judge really means that we are appointed by the Michigan Supreme Court to, in addition to doing our judge work, kind of do some of the administrative and kind of the interface with the county work for our courts. So I am the Chief Judge of the Washtenaw County Trial Court, which, to give your constituents a little bit of maybe a boring history lesson or government lesson, the circuit court is a court of general jurisdiction. So we are located downtown Ann Arbor, and the circuit court traditionally covers felony criminal cases, would cover civil cases of anything over $25,000, and historically used to include family law. So all of the family law component of that. In addition to that, there is a probate court that is a general jurisdiction court too, that serves and handles estates, protected individuals, guardianships, conservatorships, and then in the 90s, there was kind of a merger of the probate court and the family division, and so the circuit court began sharing some of the family court duties to the probate judges. And so Washtenaw County created what we call the trial court. So there are 7 judges that serve the entire county. 2 are historically probate judges and are still elected that way, and 5 are circuit judges. But our assignments amongst those categories are kind of intermingled. So if you are a resident of part of the county that Judge Frushour's court serves, you would go to one of the courthouses that the 14A serves. It's kind of your local court. But if you need something that one of our divisions does, you come downtown to the main courthouse in Ann Arbor. So
Okay.
that's what we do. I was elected in 2014. I started in 2015. My background, I grew up in Ann Arbor. I will cringingly admit for your constituents that I went to Notre Dame. So I get a lot of grief for that. But and then I too went to Wayne State Law School. So Judge Frushour probably was a warrior, but I was a Tartar back in the day when it was that. But I had a general practice law firm in Chelsea and served a lot of Western Washtenaw County, and then opened a kind of a second office in Ann Arbor a couple years before I ran for election. So yeah, I'm excited. My current assignment, just for me, is I do felony criminal. I preside over the juvenile delinquency docket, and then I also do some portion of the civil docket as well.
So let me ask this question. You named the number of judges in the county. What would cause that number to increase?
Well,
Is that set by?
that's an excellent question, actually, right now. So the Supreme Court Administrative Office has done a number of time studies over years that have in some counties have reduced the number of judges, and in some counties have increased the number of judges. I know that for the trial court, we just completed one about a year ago, and the result of that was that we were underjudged by about 3 judges. So we have made a request that they increase our number by 2. I think it's very unlikely that that will happen precipitously. They're not just going to say, okay, we're going to do this, because it not only has to work with the legislature and the state, but it also has to work with the county. And so I think, it's possible, and we will find out, I think, fairly shortly whether or not we might increase by 1. So that's possible. I don't know about the district court.
So go ahead. Go ahead,
Oh,
Dr.
so
Pearson.
I was just going to say, for the district court, there are 7 circuit court judges and there's 7 district court judges. There are 4 in the 14A district. I'm sorry, there are 3 in the 14A district, 3 in the city of Ann Arbor, and 1 in 14B district court. And so we have the same process as far as if we want an additional judge, we go through these time studies, and then they make a determination whether or not we're underjudged, overjudged, that sort of thing. We are currently where we're supposed to be for 14A, and we have 3 sitting judges for 4 locations. We have a location in Chelsea, in Saline, the city of Ypsilanti, and then Pittsfield Township.
Okay, so Judge Conlin mentioned in cooperation with the state and the county. What does that really mean? Does that mean financing? A new judge?
I mean, part of it is that. So the judges are kind of a curious, kind of, in Michigan, it's unusual because we are literally both funded by the state of Michigan and the local funding unit, the county unit. And so for us, it would be that the state legislature would have to approve the recommendation of the Supreme Court to increase our number. And so if there were a new circuit judge named or that seat created, that would be, it's primarily funded by the state, but partially funded by the county. But along with that would come some other staffing changes that would be part of the local funding unit too. So, if that's news to you and your colleagues, that's just, we're so preliminary in this. It's not like that happens. They're not going to call us next week and say, all right, fire it up for January. I mean, it will be quite a process to go through the legislature first and then kind of get the local approvals. So.
And then would that prospective position be assigned first and then elected?
Like
so
that's
they
a
give
good
you
question.
the slot.
I think they would create a vacancy. A vacancy, and then it would be at the next election. They wouldn't, I don't believe they appoint someone into a newly created seat. So it would be it would be an open election.
Right.
Okay.
That's why it's not in a rush. That's why it's not going to happen right away. So.
Okay. If you can, share some of the other areas or departments that fall up under each of you that people may not intuitively know. So when you said family division, that includes.
Yeah, I'll go first for that. So we've got friend of the court is in the trial court. So the friend of the court is the administrative arm of the family division of the court. So in charge of I mean, I can go into more detail, but in charge of child support, in charge of kind of processing divorce and custody and paternity and those kinds of things. The friend of the court works in conjunction with, for example, the prosecutor's office, because if somebody files a case for child support or paternity, that would be the prosecutor initiating that case, but then it would go through the friend of the court and come up to the courts that way. So that's one arm of our division. We have a trial court clerk division, which is kind of the main interface with the public. So if you're coming in to file a case or find out about a case, you're going to go to a clerk's office and you're going to talk to either the domestic clerk, the civil criminal clerks, the probate clerks, and get access to your file and get access to how to file things and advance your case. And then we also have a separate juvenile division too. So in the felony criminal division, our probation department is employed by the Michigan Department of Corrections, but the trial court has a juvenile division. So we employ the trial court employs the juvenile probation officers, and so that's an entirely separate division too. So those are the main divisions in our building. But those other, when I'm putting in air quotes, those divisions are really the public interface. So, it takes a bit to get to the court, to get to the judge. And so before you do any of that, you're going to probably deal with the friend of the court first. You're going to go and talk to a clerk first and get paperwork going first. And then, and again, if it's a juvenile case, then you're going to be dealing with probation and all of that. So.
Okay. What do I want to, I know I want to ask a question about, your lodging, Judge Conlin. The building that you are in is, would we say it's historic?
Well, I mean, it's not pretty historic like some of the smaller town courthouses around the state that are, the originals. This has already been rebuilt once in the I want to say in the 50s or something like that. And so it was originally a downtown kind of center of town courthouse, and then it was reconstructed at one point. So it is definitely aging for sure. And as other courthouses have been rebuilt in, a couple in Washington County. I mean, you and I were both at the event at 14B on Friday, and that's sort of like innovation and partnerships and kind of modernization to keep the public and the staff safe and keep things running smoothly. We have some challenges in this building, but we're making do. So, I mean, I don't know how quickly there's any will for any sort of sweeping change to the courthouse, but I think we're here for a while.
Okay, so I'm going to continue just for a second with that conversation, and then I'll allow Judge Frushour to,
Sure.
I don't want to say brag, but
She's got
share
some new stuff to talk about.
what's
I will give
going
you that.
on out in her location. And so she may have to tag into this because it really is going to include your downtown location as well as Chelsea, which you both know Chelsea is a real bone of contention with me. So where does it fall in terms of trying to get attention or priority for maintenance and upkeep of, I know what the system looks like, but I'm saying when you're talking about the difference between actually trying cases and the overhead of doing that, where does that typically fall into priority with, because it can be safety issues, right? So we
Sure.
need to
I think
try
that's
the
the most important.
cases, but we want to keep
Safety
our
for the
people
public
safe, right?
and the staff. Yep. Yep.
Um,
I think
because
like this is where Judge Frushour is going to dazzle both of us because, they've done those studies and they've done that modernization in at least one of the facilities in the 14th District Court. We're, as Commissioner Sanders, and this is both rumor and truth, that, we're downtown with a number of county departments and facilities. And so, one way to look at it is the courthouse literally a standalone forever going to just be a courthouse, or might we look to partner with some of the other county department agencies and arms of government to maybe build like a county center, and that might serve. And so it's kind of, those are longer range questions. We are really trying to just do what we can to keep the facility operational, under budget, and safe, pending maybe more of those discussions. That's kind of how I think we're looking at things right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, Judge Frushour, I'm gonna let you hop in because you you spend time in Chelsea.
I do. I'm
Um,
currently there now.
right. And but you also are in Saline, and
Correct.
Saline just had a ribbon cutting, I don't know, a month ago.
Yes.
I would say it's not a stretch to say that you are the most um sustainable building that
Mm-hmm.
we have currently.
Correct. And that is certainly with our collaboration with other community partners, that was definitely a vision that the Board of Commissioners really wanted to make sure that any new buildings were sustainable. And so we're excited to have an electric court building. And I think that's, really important to our community members. And certainly the court was excited to be, one of the first buildings to be you be part of this new initiative for the county. But I think, court buildings are certainly unique to other county buildings and facilities that we have, because we have certain security requirements that we really have to adhere to. And that is, not only to protect the staff, but also to the public that come in and want their cases heard. So the district court is a little bit different from the circuit court. The district court is often called, the people's court. It's where you are most likely to go if you have a court proceeding. The traffic tickets, misdemeanors, small claims, small civil disagreements between you, a neighbor, something. It could also be a landlord-tenant issue. So people are often coming to our courts, and we do have a great deal of walk-ins. I don't know how common walk-ins are at the circuit court level, but that is something that's more common in the district court. And so it is important for our buildings to be secure. So we definitely have worked with the state court administrator's office and their security team, and they've come in and reviewed our buildings in the past, and they will give you a security checklist of what needs to be fixed and what can be fixed. And then we try to work with our community partners and our funding unit to try to resolve those issues, to make sure that we're providing a place where people can conduct their court business in a safe environment.
And I think both of us, in terms of like the actual public safety, we are getting, we're getting people transported from the jail for proceedings. And like a lot of old courthouses, you end up seeing the defendant kind of walked through the hallway. So there'll be a hallway full of people waiting to get into the courtroom, and then the sheriff's department's trying to get through with somebody who's incarcerated. And again, there's safety for everybody there, both the defendant as well as the public. And so, newer court facilities tend to have internal sally ports. They have internal ways to transport, prisoners. So that is just a way of designing these types of buildings differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And many of the buildings, at least from I don't know the history of the circuit court building, but the 14A buildings were all buildings that were repurposed. I think before 14-4 was just built, 14-1 had previously been a church that they worked out of, and that was then rebuilt. And so that is an actual building that was built for the purpose of being a courthouse. So we were able to design that with that in mind. And also with the idea that we may need to grow. So we have the way it's designed is that we could possibly put another courtroom in there, or a multi-use rooms that we can also share with our community partners if they need it. And we do have other people coming and using that building for that purpose.
So you mentioned growth. Can you both just talk a little bit about, I'm not trying to nail you down to specific numbers, but if you had to, guess, what type of increases in cases and volume are your courts experiencing, maybe over the time that you both assumed the bench? What are you seeing? Sharp increases, moderate?
I think
Uh, is it tied to the growth in the
I don't
county?
think I don't at least I don't think that I would say that in the circuit court it's sharp increase. It doesn't fluctuate in that way. It's kind of more of a slow grow. Maybe what you were just referring to, Commissioner Sanders, kind of the growth of the county includes the growth of kind of our business as well. Um, but I think that, where the public sees that is as we divide up our caseload, it just means longer wait times. So that if you're waiting for a trial, I mean, just as an example, if I'm setting a criminal jury trial, it's now mid-November, I'm setting those for April. So there's just that's kind of a typical thing amongst the four of us dividing it, so that if we had an increase in personnel, we would be able to shorten the wait for people. And there's also other innovative things that we could do. Judge Frushour can speak more eloquently to the specialty courts, because it's more of a district court thing, but there are some in the circuit court, and those, as you study nationwide trends of success with non lowering recidivism, increasing treatment and help for people, the specialty courts tend to be the most successful. And so new judge could be new innovation for that as well, to kind of meet the needs of the public. So, but that
Okay.
would be where we would see an improvement.
So, Judge Freshour, before you respond, can I ask you this question,
Mhm.
um, for your response? Um, if you were to get assigned a new judge for our county,
Mhm.
would you be able to say that that judge would sit over all of your specialty courts? How does that work? Do you understand? Are you able to design what you would want them to concentrate on, or is that Supreme Court outlined?
So, special the chief judge of each district or circuit, they are the ones who assign dockets. So, yes, if there was a new judge, or every couple of years, every district and every circuit does it a little bit differently, how often they change dockets and how often they reassign cases. So yes, I would be able to make that decision. For specialty courts in particular, it's usually a judge project. So for instance, the sobriety court program in the 14A district court is something that I was really passionate about, and why I wanted to run for judge when I first started. I used to work in the 15th district court, and at that time, they really had all of the specialty courts. They had a mental health court, a veterans treatment court, they had a street outreach court at the time, and a sobriety court. And having worked in those for 7 years and seeing what a difference it truly made in people's lives, in our community as a whole, and seeing the long-term studies about recidivism rates, it really made such an impact on me as a defense attorney that when I came onto the bench, I knew it was something that we really were not providing to the out county, the rest of not just the city of Ann Arbor. 14B now also has their own court, but we needed something to sort of fill in the gaps for everyone else in the county. And we're on our second year now, and it's pretty exciting, and we are getting constant referrals. So there was certainly a need there, and so I'm glad that we've been able to open our doors up and fill that need and get people the help that they need.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Um,
And sometimes that evolves through like a judge's specialty passion, as Judge Freshour was saying, but also there's a lot of there's a lot of partnerships with specialty courts as well, like with local and national agencies that are invested in that type of treatment, that kind of allow the judge to not reinvent the wheel, not make it up.
okay. Okay. Um,
And it is grant funded. So that's something that we have to apply for a grant. And then every couple of years they come and make sure that we're following the right procedures, we're holding to the right standards of practice, and they certify your court. And then that certification helps you get additional funding, not only from the state, but also you can apply for federal grants if they're available. So they are pretty rigid about it, but it's really an important part of the process.
So speaking of grants, or in the grant world, soft money, meaning money you cannot rely on. You may have it now, but 12 months from now it may
Right.
expire and not be re-upped, and then you're scrambling because you have people's, livelihood attached to those grants. Um, what do the court's grant life look like these days? Is I want to say, is there bipartisan support for judicial work? Is that a loaded question?
I would
I
say,
mean,
in speaking in terms of the specialty court, there certainly is bipartisan support, and the Supreme Court gets their funding from the legislators, and there's one pie though, so we all kind of have to split it up, and they make the determination of which court needs what amount of money every year. I will say that the process so far, as I've been going through it, they are very good about, contacting with us on a regular basis and making sure that we have what we need. And if we don't, can we get it from another court that doesn't, that maybe has a little bit too much, maybe they can share. And it really feels like a community. We all want to make sure that we're all succeeding in this important programming. And so they're also very vocal about, hey, we believe the funding next year is going to be less, so please prepare for this. So we've been trying to get creative and looking, some of the federal grants that we had previously applied for are no longer around. And we're kind of just keeping our eyes open and applying for anything that we can, any grants, any scholarships, anything that could help out our participants, because many times it's life or death for these individuals. So this is really important work. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but we are constantly looking for additional grant funding for those programs so that one day they can't just disappear.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to add, and then Judge Conlin, you sounded like you were about to weigh in, but I wanted to ask, because this has always been a question for me, because you are a judicial arm, where can you apply for grants from? Where do your grants come from? Do you get grants from just regular old philanthropic organizations, or does it have to be, specifically tied to a
government
government
work.
branch? Or
I'll let Judge Frushour answer that to start, and then I'll weigh in because I think she's more deeply involved in the process than I am. But
so all of the grants that we have applied through have been either through the state of Michigan, or there's some federal grants that are specific to sobriety court programs. When I worked in the Veterans Court, there were also additional funding, nonprofit organizations that we were able to get some smaller grants, but those were pretty specific. There was one time we had a grant that was for people who had issues with their car, and this was for car repairs only. So there are some pretty creative ways to get grants. For the most part, what we've been, for our court, which is still relatively new, and we don't have enough years really to support some of these more specialized grants, we've really been going through the state funding, and certain grants that are specific for new sobriety court programs, or that are a little bit more creative with how you can get that funding. And as far as they don't need to see 10 years of sobriety court work before applying for the grant. So we're kind of trying to get creative, but most of ours are through organizations that are specifically trying to fund these types of programs.
okay.
And I
That's
think that that's consistent with our programming as well. We have um, most of our funding for our specialty courts also comes through applications through the state and federal government. We're not out trying to compete with like community foundation grants or things like that. I think that it's not impossible. I think we could be the recipient if there was a particular program. Judge Connors, who just retired about a year ago, kind of pioneered a peacemaking court in conjunction with some of the local, the dispute resolution center and different programming there. So there have been creative partnerships that way. But I think most of the traditional like court programming has been through government grants.
okay. Um, I want to ask you, based on your interaction or relationships with your colleagues in other counties, how does Washtenaw County measure up related to the support that it provides or doesn't to the courts?
Well, I mean, this is purely just anecdotal talking about this with
Absolutely.
other judges. I mean, I think that we have a great partnership with the county and the commission. I mean, I think that, there are everybody statewide, whether you're in the legislative arm or you're in the judicial arm or you're in the executive arm, everybody's looking to be fiscally conscious and careful with money. But I do think that there's real divide between the arms of government. And I just we're I think we are healthy in our questioning and our curiosity about what everybody's doing, but we're not in the antagonistic world that I think a lot of counties do face. That's not a scientific answer, and the rest of my colleagues across the state don't take arms against me for saying that.
You got 2 cents on that, Judge Frushour?
No, I would agree. I think what's unique about our county is I think that, and I can't really speak to all other counties because I'm not there and I don't know the relationships, but I do feel that everyone is open to conversations. Everyone's open to talk about problems and really work together to find solutions. And I really appreciate that. For the most part, when we're having these conversations, everyone respects where people are coming from, that we understand that not everyone sees what we see every day. And so it's great that we have so many great community partners that are willing to listen to our concerns, which may not seem maybe kind of unique to our situation, but I think our community partners are really respectful of our situation and are willing to work with us to find solutions, and often have to be kind of creative because yes, the money is always kind of an issue with all of these solutions.
Sure.
So I think that the two of you probably are at a place now where I mean, respectfully, you sit higher than the average person, and so you may not get that daily dose like you probably got before you started these positions. Um,
So I'm going to
what do
interrupt you
you
and say, literally, we do, because they build those benches so we sit higher than everyone else in the room. That's totally a curious thing that I didn't really understand until I became a judge.
what do you think causes? So when I was going through the websites and just thinking about the whole process of even interacting with the courts, it's a very intimidating process. And so in my mind, I was like, I wonder if there is any such thing as like an ombudsman for courts. So, let's say you've never been engaged judicially, and then you get engaged, either your own situation or no fault of, maybe somebody or you're related to. How on earth do these people prepare to even interact? I mean, I've been to the courts for friend of the court and other things like that. I used to serve landlord tenant papers, so I was, comfortable coming into the courts and get my documents and knowing I need to take my shoes off and all of that stuff. But it can be quite intimidating for that person that has never, been had an encounter. How do people prepare to not be anxious, uh, to even learn about court etiquette, because there is such a thing. Um, I'm just throwing that out there for anybody that may be listening that is just kind of clueless,
Sure.
like, but they got to figure it out, and they don't have a learning curve, right?
Right.
So, even Judge Conlin mentioned scheduling dockets. The average taxpayer may not recognize, right, that someone that commits a crime, allegedly commits a crime, um, and is in the system, that the taxpayer, which could include that individual as well, right, is
It
paying for
would. Yeah, sure it would.
housing and staffing and all of that until and through the trial date. I don't know that most people think about that when they talk about a price tag for, what the courts cost and how they're related
Right.
to
I think that,
sheriff
yeah.
fees and things like that.
Well, I think that, you've opened up like an incredibly complicated question, and one that I think all the three of us are grappling with, right? Because part of the issue, specifically in the I'll just say in the criminal division, but it applies to everything, is, we can't fund our courts on the backs of criminal defendants and fines and costs, because it just perpetuates, you know lack of income, and keeping, and it goes to probation, it goes to community corrections, it goes to the sheriff's department, it goes to the courts, and all of these things are incredibly intertwined. The idea of, you know you sort of, I don't know, I don't know if you intended this, but, the idea of, the least restrictive, least costly method. I mean, the most costly method to have the taxpayers pay for something is to have somebody incarcerated waiting for their trial. I mean, that's, so you weigh that versus the public safety element or the risk of flight. And so you make decisions as to, is there a less costly way to do that? And I think most judges are pretty aware of that. But in answer to the earlier part of your question, I think Judge Frushour and I both would agree, although I'll let her weigh in on this, but she sees this more than I do, but we both see it, is the number of people that no longer have lawyers. I mean, it used to be, most people coming to court, I think, would have a lawyer do that for them. But I think people have realized that it's too costly, that maybe they want to do it on their own. Maybe there are ways to kind of get in there. So I think that, number one, we have a great staff that assists the public in ways that they can. I don't think either the 14A or the circuit court have an ombudsman. There's not like a clearinghouse of information to get that kind of, broad-based preparatory stuff. But I will say, and I'm going to speak on behalf of my colleagues, and I'll let Judge Frushour as well, but that increase in unrepresented parties, like when the people come into court without a lawyer, I think it goes to the judge to try to level the playing field in ways that we can without interfering with the case. I think that every judge that I know, recognizes that, there is a disadvantage if you don't have a lawyer. And so while I have to hold people to the same standards of the court rules, but we do what we can to try to make sure that somebody's not being railroaded or somebody's not being, forced to do something, because I think it is fundamentally a fairness thing. So,
Okay.
I don't know if there's ever going to be a way for us to relieve anyone's anxiety about coming to court.
Yeah.
unless you're a lawyer, which even I think sometimes they're a little anxious coming in anyway, or unless you work there, because I think that the whole process can be very intimidating. Most
Yeah,
people's
it is.
experience with court is watching something on TV or YouTube, and so it's a very skewed version of what happens. It's generally not as dramatic as what you see. Every once in a while, we'll have a dramatic day, but for the
Usually you
most
get the worst of it on YouTube.
for sure. That's for one. It's not usually quite so crazy, but the biggest thing that everyone should know is, if you are charged with a crime, you are entitled to be represented by an attorney. And the first time you ever have to go to court, you are entitled, and we make sure to inform every single person that you are entitled to an attorney, and you do not have to proceed without an attorney. And so we work with the public defender's office and the prosecutor's office, and everyone is very they make sure that they train their staff. We make sure we train our clerks, and we make sure that we make that message very clear that you are entitled to an attorney, and to make sure everyone gets an attorney as quickly as possible during that process. So that can certainly help a little bit on the criminal perspective. One thing that the 14-8 courts did was we applied for a self-help center grant, and we were awarded that last year, and we just got renewed for this year too. So at the 14A location, we have one part-time staff member, one full-time staff member. Okay. That's all paid through this grant, who are there, and it's a self-help center. So they're guiding people. They're not giving legal advice, but they are helping people if they need to find forms, if they're a little bit confused on where they should be, if they're just confused about the steps, like some of those general questions about court that most people just don't know, and you wouldn't know unless you've had a case. You can come to that self-help center, and they will walk you through the process of it. Okay. But as far as getting legal advice for any civil cases or landlord-tenant, they aren't attorneys, and they are trained to sort of let you know, like, this is how far I can take you, and then you might have to ask for an attorney or find an attorney. But they will give you at least some steps to get you started in the process, and at least help guide you so you can find that form, or you can at least find the answer that you're looking for if they can't get it to you.
Okay. How would you describe the cost of being judicially engaged? So if you're not, if you're a defendant or a plaintiff, what does that cost kind of look like? I mean, outside of you got to take time off work, or, to come and be present. Because I know that we've reduced, or you all have recommended, and we have approved reduction or elimination of certain fees, but there's still other fees, right?
Yeah.
Is it, I don't mean to be trivial, but you got to
No.
get to court, you got to pay to park, it's a thing, right?
Well, if you're a criminal defendant, you don't have to pay for a lawyer. And we are really very fortunate in Washtenaw County with the strength of our public defender's office and our court appointed list. I mean, I'm not saying other counties don't have good representation, but we are really fortunate with our public defender's office and the court appointed. So it's the stakes might be higher in the criminal division, but your costs are lower in that sense. So you're not, I would say probably the most expensive, maybe family law. I mean, at my level anyway, because you really are, well, there's the emotional toll of that for sure, but there's also, there's the cost of a lawyer if you're hiring a lawyer. There are, it's the filing, the fees and stuff for the civil and the family division, are kind of one-time things. You just pay to file your case. They're not fines and costs at the end. I mean, child support, alimony, those, you could look at those as long-term expense, but it's not quite the same. But it is the time. Commissioner Sanders, I mean, as a lawyer for a long time and as a judge, I can tell you that the emotional, the time away from the rest of your life, the paying to park and the hassle factor of going to court and not being in control of like the other side filing something and you have to jump through those hoops. It's nobody recognizes quite the cost of that. So you're right to ask that question. It is a taxing environment for the average citizen, for sure.
Mhm. Um,
And I do just want to really shout out to our public defender's office because I sit on a statewide board for the State Bar Association, the criminal division, and listening to what is happening throughout our state, it's really not the same. In our county, if you are requesting an attorney, we give you that attorney, especially for that hearing. And ultimately, if it's determined that you can pay back, there's a mechanism that can be done. But in many other counties, people have to, kind of bring receipts on why they can't afford an attorney before they're even given one, which I didn't even think was still happening in Michigan. But based on some of these conversations, it is still happening. And I'm just really grateful that our community really sees how important it is to be represented at every stage in a criminal process and really takes that seriously. So I just wanted to make sure that we, give them a good shout out because they do great work and they are always available.
I didn't know that was optional.
It's not, but
But I think counties
judges are
will
allowed
leverage
to,
that.
right. Judges are allowed to inquire about whether or not you can pay. So they can ultimately make you pay back for your representation if you meet a certain threshold. But I think Washtenaw County really values people's liberties and make sure that everyone is represented and they're not as worried about collecting every nickel and dime at the beginning before we can even people are just in the middle of chaos in their life. They've been charged with a crime and they're thrown into the courtroom and now they're being asked, well, do you have a bank statement? Do you have pay stubs? We don't do that in our county, and that's really it's really a game changer for those individuals.
And I'll just say also kind of from the like the rumor, like when you hear the word public defender, like people think of like, oh my gosh, in New York my public defender was terrible. Like
Right.
our public defenders and prosecutors are absolutely on a level playing field as far as quality of representation, quality of work. So the citizens of Washtenaw County are in a great place as far as that's concerned. So that's a real gift for the judge too.
Yes, absolutely, I agree.
Mhm. So one of the things that I didn't recognize until I became a commissioner as a former UAW member was how many of our judicial staff are actually organized labor, unionized. I mean,
Sure.
I all due respect,
Almost
I don't
all
want I don't
for
want the
us.
prosecutors to come after me, but I thought, how can the prosecutors be unionized? What if they do something wrong? We got to go through a process to, I mean, they're in a position that makes other people more vulnerable than most, right? And so I'm not knocking the fact that they are, but I was stunned. I didn't even know that was a thing, right? I just thought that that was one of those professions where you're at willable. So that was shocking to
Yeah.
me.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, organized labor in its heyday and the pride that we all have with interacting or interfacing with our labor unions is I mean yeah, absolutely.
yeah. I feel like I want to ask you about these because I'm gonna say religiously, thank God, we have not had any local or national news related to, I want to say, child abandonment issues or neglect. Um, but I guess I want to ask you, what, if anything, could you say, maybe especially you, Judge Conlin, what, if anything, could you say about just to the community at large about how we could do a better job to try and help protect children that we may think are vulnerable, uh, I don't know, changes changes maybe in, I don't want to get you too off kilter here, but I'm asking you
Well,
because
and
it's been a major thing lately. They talk about how these children have not been followed when they supposedly transfer to a school district, and then they just get lost, right? They just kind of fall into this black hole. I don't want to start crying, but it's very unsettling that we have such vulnerable members
mhm.
of our
I mean,
community not being protected.
so I'll first kind of own that that's an area of the law that I have never practiced in. So I didn't work in abuse and neglect as a lawyer, and historically there's been a single judge that's been assigned that. Previously it was Judge Connors, now it's Judge Vandenberg. And so what I understand about it, and kind of in making those assignments, it's one of those areas where we as the court um, invest but rely on our relationships with other community stakeholders like DHHS and school districts and and things of that. So I think the idea of communication and the court staffing element, I mean, those are also areas where there are, assigned attorneys that are, that are part of a contract that specialize in that. And so they're kind of the eyes and the ears of the court as well. And so there's kind of that ongoing, so I'm echoing what you're saying about concern. The idea that forget the sort of I don't want to be in the headlines as the judge who's in charge of that and that happened. But
Right.
nobody wants to see a child victimized. Nobody wants to see that, and so the idea that that could happen is, that's like the most chilling thing that any one of us could think about. So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, but it is.
So
I think it's a partnership again.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, now I'm hoping that we would rank somewhere up at the top as being a county that tries to put our children first. Not that parental rights isn't important as a parent myself, uh, but I would hope
Hmm.
that someone sitting on the other side of me would put my kid first, not me as the adult that should
And
know better, right?
sure, sure.
Um,
But I mean,
so
just to sort of like, yeah, go ahead. I mean, I think I agree with you that, there is that sort of that current of, you know, keeping families intact versus keeping kids safe and kind of trying to hold parents accountable. It is a very difficult line to walk, but that's why it's really important that the court not be the only person, the
right,
judge not be the only person making those decisions, that there's a
right,
lot of attention paid to those families and those kids.
yes. I mean, I can say it now because he's retired, but Judge Connors was my family judge, and you just knew it was no nonsense. Don't go in there with foolishness. He was not, he was not hearing it. And I appreciated
Yeah, that's
that he
fair.
put the child
Yeah.
first, right? Um, so I think the only other thing that I would like to ask of both of you is if you uh were able to speak to my constituents and the residents, what if anything would you like to say to them or share with them about your areas, whether it's something you think they don't know or whether or not it's a shameless plug for the possibility of future support. What would you like to say if this were like your coffee hour or something? What would you like to just share with them?
Do you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I think if I was at a coffee hour, I would certainly encourage everyone to come on by to any of our local district courts. I mean, we really are the people's court and we are there to serve the public. And if people have questions or problems or just want to see a docket in person, our doors are always open and we'd love to hear from people. I think we always have these boxes at all of our locations for feedback. And people don't fill them out, but we actually really do read those and we take them into account. And we try to really provide the services that we have to, but we want to hear from the public. So we're providing them in a way that makes sense to them and that they're accessible to them and they feel like they're included in the process because this is their court. And we certainly want to make sure everyone feels welcomed and that they have access to the courts.
Okay. Thank you.
And I don't know that my answer would be hugely different. And this kind of goes back to your earlier question, Commissioner Sanders, about how people could prepare. But the courts are open to the public. And so, although you have to pay to park and it's a hassle to get down here, to come in and just watch proceedings and see how they go, I'm not looking for votes necessarily, but I'll just put in the plug that judges are human. Like we all, are just like everybody else. And so we all have a job to do, but I don't know a colleague that doesn't want to be compassionate, doesn't want to be fair, doesn't want to give someone, their day in court. I mean, there's sometimes where, it becomes very difficult or, scheduling or that kind of thing. And it can be really frustrating. I know that it can be because people aren't coming to court because things are going well. But I think that the average person who comes in here, it's like going to the post office or if you treat someone, like if you go in and ask questions and you're not yelling at someone or angry at somebody, people are going to go that extra step. And I think that that's true through the whole building here. And I would say that, everybody here wants people to get a fair shake and wants the process to be protected that way. So I think that I would say just to not be intimidated and not be scared to come down and ask questions and call the judge's office if you have a question, and we'll do our best.
And you don't have to pay for parking at any of the 14A locations.
Yeah, downtown is a bit of a problem that way. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
it's not that easy. So
yeah, it is. It is definitely downtown is its own animal, and shares the streets and parking with umpteen other entities, events, fairs, you name it. Yeah,
Yep.
So I guess the last thing I would ask is that you both have websites that people can go to try and gather information in advance. You mentioned the surveys.
Let me actually interrupt you with that question. This is directly for your constituents, though. If you go to the trial court's website, each judge has like a page that describes procedures too. So that would also be helpful that the public can go say, this is how you file things with this judge, or so that is actually something, I'm glad you brought that up, that is unique to each of the seven of us. So yeah,
yes.
Thank you.
We have general information on our website as well.
Okay. And people can find information there as well if they have a concern, complaint, or a compliment.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And they can call our offices directly.
Okay. Well, we're not bad. We're running 401. That's really good. I appreciate you taking time. I was really surprised that I wasn't getting a delegate, someone that you were assigning this to. I appreciate you taking the time out of what is, always a busy schedule to just share
Happy
some
to do it.
information.
We both have run for all three of us have run for elections, so we know what that's like. So it's all part of the get out there and just interface with the voters of this county.
Yes,
the important people.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I am hoping to continue. I started these conversations because I live in a district that is a hybrid. It's rural, but it's urban. And it's a mix of both where folks wave at you, but they may not actually, you may not be stopping and having like a downtown conversation with them. And so this was my way of trying to reach them and share information about the county and the county's operations. So
Okay.
it's my hope to be able to do this at least annually with everyone, but I've offered to everyone that has been willing to come on and have a conversation that if there is something uh, pressing or, an update to something that we've talked about, that I'm always happy to reschedule you to come back, especially if it's really something that you think
Okay.
needs to get out to the
Yeah.
residents.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, no, thanks. Thank you for the opportunity.
So thank
Okay.
you both very
Awesome.
much.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Have a good
Take care.
afternoon.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.